World Financial Group offers entrepreneurs from all backgrounds the opportunity to start their own business on a level playing field. Dr. Yana Woodhouse, receiving the WCM Wall Street Pioneer Award by the United Black Wall Street of America, Inc., is one of those entrepreneurs.
I see WFG and TFA as a place where African Americans with an entrepreneurial mindset can flourish. And the bonus, we help families and serve the communities across the country.
To learn more about us, go to worldfinancialgroup.com.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Good afternoon. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, The Art of War. I hope all is well, and I wish you all a Happy New Year. This is our last broadcast for 2024. The next time we talk, it'll be in 2025. One of the things that I am happy to say over the years that I've done as a tradition around this time of a new year is to introduce my longtime friend for many, many years, Lloyd Strayhorn, who now is one of the most sought after numerologists in the world. I mean, his book is in a number of different languages now, and he does a number of different things that have come to pass over the years based on his expertise with numbers. Actually, Numbers of You is one of his, I believe, his first book, but it's one that is pretty popular with people who are interested in numerology. So I am happy to introduce you to, if you have not met him before, Mr. Lloyd Strayhorn.
Hey, Tony.
Lloyd Strayhorn, my brother, how are you doing?
Fine. You know, when you mentioned that book, how it started, Lloyd Williams gave me a mock book. He gave it to me as a gift. I brought it home, and I said if I had to write a book, and they had little lettering, so you could only use but so many letters, right. Only 2 A's, not 4 A's or whatever. So I came up with the title, Numbers in You, put it on the book. I have that original book to this day because Numbers in You is now 45 years old, the book.
I still have it too. Matter of fact, I'm keeping it, I have a library, and I was telling my children and my grandchildren that, these books, don't throw them away because
these books are quite valuable, quite rare.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
How is it going, Lloyd Strayhorn? You've been doing so much stuff. What's been happening, and what are you looking at first and foremost for 2025?
Well, I'm looking to travel. I'm looking to wind things down because the year that we're coming into right around the corner, 2025, adds up to a 9. So symbolically, that represents endings or letting go or letting bygones be bygones or exercising forgiveness because it's a humanitarian number. At the same time, it is governed by Mars, which is the war planet. So when you see the war breaking out in the Middle East and Ukraine and all that stuff, And it's interesting because all of it has been increasing since October, because a lot of people don't know the year don't start actually January the 1st. It actually starts in October. It's like you taking your wife to see the movie. Before you see the main movie, what do you look at? You look at the trailers. Okay.
Mhm.
They say, okay, we want to come back now. We don't want to see that. So it's late September, October that gives you a snapshot. That's why I always refer to every October as the preview month. If you pay
Mhm.
attention to what's going on, it gives you a snapshot of what is to come. So this is when the wars have increased. The the year before that, in October of 2023, that was the October 7th thing that triggered this whole thing that's going on right now.
Mhm.
So it's just very interesting. But nine on the other side of the coin is the humanitarian number. It
Mm.
means global, universal. So all of us should act in the human spirit of humanity. We all got to eat. We all got to protect ourselves from the weather, and don't get caught up in the gender and color and money and all that other stuff, but act as a humane person. Although that seems very challenging nowadays.
And as relates to the number nine, what universal, besides letting go, what universal effect that people might be looking at in 2025? Of course.
Manifesting their dreams, because the cycle is, see, the nine, in addition to endings and travel, is also the cycle of dreams come true. So
Mm.
let's say you're in a situation and you postponed it or put it off for whatever reason, job commitments, family commitments, or whatever the case is. Well, this year is going to allow you to bring all those things you've been putting on hold front and center.
Interesting. So you got to be careful what you think about them.
Yes, yes. As our elders say, be careful what you think, because you just might get it. But if you're thinking positive, you should get positive results. Because the human math is, if you do the wrong things for the wrong reasons, you get the wrong results. But if you do the right things for the right reasons, of course, let us pray, you get the right results.
Now, how many languages are your books in now?
I don't know, but I tell you this right now, I have an online course. I'm in about 113 countries. I'm
Wow.
on all 7 continents. I have close to 9,000 students around the world.
Wow. And how is your work translated? Is all these students speak? Do they speak English
No,
or?
no, 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 no. It's they. I got about, I think, 30 something languages
Mhm.
that the course is taught in.
And you use the computer?
Yeah, they use the
Break
computer and it translates. And the beauty of AI and this technology now. I saw
everybody's
something,
supposed
you
to.
have earplugs and whatever language you want to put it or translate, because you know how when people think they're talking about them.
Yeah, I
Not
have a
anymore.
pair of those. I
Not
haven't
anymore.
used
Not
them
anymore.
yet, but I
Yeah,
I have a pair of those that
yeah, yeah.
allows for you to, if someone says something in a language, and that language is plugged into your earphone.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So you
Because
can
I'm
try.
getting ready to surprise a whole lot of people, But I do have a pair of those, and AI can be like anything else. It can be a wonderful thing, or it can be a scary thing,
Mm-hmm.
because we're no longer uh, independent. I guess that's the best way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
2025. Uh, do you have any predictions, Lloyd, for
Well, yes,
2025?
I was explaining that since nine is governed by Mars, which is the war planet. And see, I'm not just talking about in the Middle East and Ukraine and Syria and all those. I'm talking about people warring with themselves, because since not nine rules, dangers from knives, guns, accidents, cuts, cuts, bomb explosions, fender benders. So people who have guns in their home, I was telling them they should be most careful. Every year some child or some adult is killed with a gun in the home, you
Mm,
know. And not only that, but nine is a war number, which means people are going to have a warlike attitude.
mm,
So a couple of weeks ago, they had a piece about in California that road rage is increasing. So let's say our cars meet and bump each other. my attitude when you get out the car is everything okay? Because the insurance company is going to take care of that matter anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I was telling people that this year has a lot of consequences. So let's say, somebody wants to get a parking spot and they jockeying to get the parking spot. One jumps into a rage and shoot the other person. Well, the person being shot may not go home that evening, but the person who just shot him definitely ain't gonna get that parking space because he's going to the precinct. Okay, so we don't. So what I'm trying to tell people is they gotta think this year. They gotta think of the consequences, which is not always easy when you lose your temper.
Yeah,
And then when you ask, is it worth it? Almost always it's gonna be no. Almost always.
that's true. So it's a time of making your wish come true, a time that you have to be careful because war, which is my initials, WAR,
Yep, it certainly is.
you know. So what, I always ask this question. Being born on June the 19th in 2025, what should I expect?
Okay, well, so for the viewers too, everyone has what they enter a personal year. There's the universal year, and then there's the personal year. Well, the universal year simply comes from adding the four numbers of the year we're about to enter, which is 2025. So therefore, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 is 9. Just that simple. Next year is going to be your year even more so,
This is a
Tony.
10, right?
Yes, it's a 10, which is a 1. So anybody born on the 1st, the 10th, the 19th, like you, or the 28th, it's their year. So in addition to the universal year, there is the personal year, which means later for the whole world, what about me? Because that's how people think. Well, what you do is you take the month and day you're born, June 19th, but instead of adding the year you're born, you substitute it and put in the year you want to know about now, which is in this case 2025. So when I did June the 19th to 2025, it came out to the single digit of a 7. 7 is one of those numbers, Tony, that's kind of, for people who don't understand it, kind of challenging because we live in a world that's mostly material, financial, emotional, which is girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, stuff like that. 7 is more of a spiritual time. It's when you find your spiritual center. This is when you start getting into meditation, prayer, things of that nature. They're looking for something that goes beyond the five senses. And that's why I call it the law of attraction. That whatever you're thinking about will be drawn to you. So, as an illustration, if a person's saying, "Man, I don't have no money," you can't think like that. It's that's why this whole saying, "The elders, be careful what you ask for."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is going to be the point as you go into the month, into your year of June 19th. So let's say we took Matt, right? So I take April the 20th and add it to the year, not the year he's born, but the year I want to know about. He'll be in the 6th year. So he's actually in a year that you're about to leave. So this year has been either some kind of duty, responsibilities, obligations for you, going back to school. It's a health cycle, and it doesn't mean you in bad health, but maybe a close family member, somebody that would affect you in that way indirectly. This is a good time to get into an exercise program. So all the things you've been doing, he's about to enter. And so he's always 1 year behind the curve with you. So now you can show him the way in terms of, being spiritual, reflective, meditative, etc., like that, and keeping the peace.
But the most important thing is to be careful what you wish for.
Yes. And I tell people in a 7th cycle, which I call the law of attraction, you got to visualize things on the mental screen of your mind. They have these vision board things where you cut out and you stick dollar bills and yachts and all that stuff. Yours is on the mental screen of your mind, saying,
Hmm.
Tony, what do you want? And whatever you want, you hold on to that image. And as our elders say, then you let go and let God.
Now, tell me again, how did we get? I know how you got 9 as far as adding up, but how? Give me the 7 cycle. How did that come about again? How
I
did you?
took June underneath, I put the 19th underneath that. Instead of putting the year you're born, I put the year I want to know about, which is this year, 2025. When I
Right.
added those 3 numbers together, that came out to um, the cycle that you're in, which is a 7. And 7 is more spiritual, soul searching, reflective, new age, The thing about sevens, they don't like a lot of noise and confusion and drama. They'd rather leave that to someone else.
Well, I've been in the seven for a long time, so I guess I was practicing for now.
Well, Tony, I talked about you before we came on. I says I W the tortoise because you move slow, not in a way that's slow, but you move that. I bet you don't take medication for high blood pressure or whatever, because you've always been cool, calm, and collected. You're the only person that's consistent like that, Tony. I don't know how you do it. Maybe your past experience in military or whatever, but you're always cool, calm, and collected. Very rarely have I ever seen people roughly
Well,
offended. Very rare. And
you
I've been
know,
knowing you for 40 years.
I'm sure that my daughter and some others might say, "Well, you haven't seen them the way we see them," but
Well, as a father, you got to. I'm a father of children too. So, we got to stay up on them before they go in another direction that we don't need or like.
so I know that I ask this question all the time, but there are people who are new. How did you get into numerology?
Quite
We have on the
excellent.
block. We have a reason, but I'll tell you about your dad's barbershop. But that's another story.
Yeah, well, that's part of it too, because at one point, even today, Harlem numbers are still played in Harlem, and at the time we were coming up, there were no New York lottery states and stuff like that. And remember, Brother Lawson, he was
Yes,
advocating for that for New York State to legalize the number game.
but they didn't want to give him the
No,
real deal. He
no.
left.
And once New York did go, New York never went back. Now you can play numbers morning, noon, night, in between, lottery, bingo, wingo. I mean, it's everything you can play. And unfortunately, very little credit was given to Brother Lawson. He had been
I
advocating
know.
it for years. They won't, legalize numbers and
And
whatnot.
he went to Albany. I remember, people going to Albany, and I forgot what it was. I think it was either the taxes or the cut that they would get, but it was something that made him feel that this is not going to work.
Yeah, well, he probably knew the political landscape more than we did at that time. You know what I'm saying? And as a result of it, but New York did pick up the mantle and began to do it.
And that,
Huh?
I said, and that changed a lot. I remember the number man was like a fairy godfather. He would bring turkeys on Thanksgiving, gifts on Christmas if you needed to have some issue that he would help you, take you to the doctor. If you needed extra money, he would make sure that you got what you
Yeah,
need.
but see, things are so different, Tony, because back in our time, it was nothing for. I remember where I was living in Harlem, they would send us to Bear Mountain, okay? Peg Leg Bates, okay? I remember seeing him. Uh,
On the circle line.
yeah, they would pay the elders rent. They would do something active for the kids. None of that exists no more. None of it, not even close.
Yeah,
And
it's
was so and a lot of the people we now know actually went to school funded
based
by
on,
number
that's
runners.
true.
See what I'm
Lawson
saying?
being one of those,
Yeah,
who helped fund a lot of. I mean, as quiet as it kept, not to glorify gangsters, but many of the gangsters, like the Bumpies and all of those,
that's right.
they did a lot as it relates to making sure certain people who are now doctors, lawyers, got
Exactly
educated.
right. Exactly. And they made sure old ladies' rents was paid, was respected in the community. There was a lot of things. The only one closest that does that now is the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce for the scholarship programs. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And they have produced, as a result of 50 years,
yeah.
lawyers, judges, professionals, things of that nature. That's the only thing that comes closest to it now in modern terms is the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce.
On a consistent basis, you're absolutely right. And most of the people, myself, Lloyd, and the rest of them, grew up with the numbers.
Yeah, that's it. That's what we did. We all grew
You
up in numbers. My father, he at first they would come to his shop because they had number holes and stuff. It was simply places where you go and just put in your numbers and whatnot. So my father's place was the stop in Harlem
That's
for a
true.
couple of decades. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just an interesting time. Harlem is so rich in its Renaissance and it's interesting because Casper Holstein, a brother from the Caribbean, started the
Started
Harlem
the number
game.
game. Yeah.
Yes, and in fact, his home was right down the block from the Greater Harlem Chamber of Commerce on 136th Street near 8th Avenue. Okay, and he would do scholarships. You know what I'm saying? During the Harlem Renaissance, he helped a lot of people. So he would give $1,000 awards. Now, $1,000 don't sound like no money, but during the 20s,
During that
you
time, that
could
was a lot of money.
listen, you could get 3 lemons for 10 cents. I walked into a store about 2 weeks ago and one lemon was $1.99. Okay, which tells you how far that money went. You
But
know,
Casper, I remember you worked on the book that the chamber
yes,
put out
yes, Forever
about
Harlem.
Forever Harlem, and it talked about the numbers game
Yeah,
and
that was a piece that I wrote about how it started. Casper Holstein, then the queen or the dragon lady, as they call her. There was a lot of things, and you know what's happening with the prohibition in January the 16th in the early the 20s. That's when Doug Schultz. In fact, there was a politician that directed Doug Schultz to go to Harlem because he was the beer baron. See,
right.
his thing was beer out of the Bronx.
Uh-huh.
So what happens is once all the alcohol was shut down, and that's developed the speakeasies and stuff like that I guess made it the Harlem life exciting, so people would come to Harlem. But it was a politician that directed Schultz that he needs to look into Harlem. And so now when you see these so-called dramatic TV things of Forrest Whitaker pretending to be Bumpy Johnson and all this other stuff, brother, that is not the. Do you know Bumpy Johnson's his original occupation was an exterminator? He had an exterminating business on Third Avenue, you know, but it was
Someone,
a double entendre.
it was funny because someone had said, "Yeah, that was," and he became a different type of exterminator after.
That's what I'm talking about. It was a double-edged sword with that because he was a Terminator in one way and a Terminator in another way. But it was actually the Dragon Lady that took Bumpy Johnson under her wings and
Yeah,
made Bumpy Johnson what he was. You know what I'm saying?
basically as her bodyguard, because Dutch Schultz was trying to take
To
over.
hone in. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But
And
everybody
he was
respected.
crazy. He was so crazy that even the organized crime had to get rid of him. Because he was bringing
Yeah,
up
and they
the
did. They
heat.
shot him when he was in Jersey. And the Dragon Lady says, "You reap what you sow." She sent a personal letter to his hospital. Okay, was all that is the story in the book Forever Harlem, where I talked about the numbers game. But the numbers, see, what was important during the Depression, it was the numbers game that kept a lot of our families
That's
in
true.
food.
With food.
Numbers, listen, numbers was played in funeral homes, in barbershops, and everywhere you can take pool halls, you name it. You could always go and put in a number. And where is it you could get and put $1 and you get a 600 return on your money?
And
Okay.
I could always hear this. What's the bolita?
Yeah. And they show you the art of communications, which is the power of the drum. When the first, because the numbers were predicated upon the races,
Yeah.
the horse races, right? So when the first number came out, let's say on 110th Street, this was before the internets, and this is when phones was connected to the wall and all this stuff. But within 5 minutes, whether it was on 110th Street, 155th Street, knew too what the number was. Word of mouth. So everybody knew what the number was. I mean, it's just amazing. Tony, we are amazing people, man. And numbers are amazing. Numbers are
Yeah,
really
and the state, I don't know who tapped into the number info that led the state to begin to see how valuable it is. But the state has made a lot of money and has taken a lot of money from people
And remember, it was for education originally. That was the premise.
But
If you're going to play the lottery and looking at the educational system, I'm not impressed, to be honest.
yeah, and the same, it was a friend of mine who used to be a numbers guy, and he said the state has taken that away. And then a few years, he used to, have a cannabis business. He says, "Damn, now the state has taken that away." Whatever
Anywhere
seems
there's
to
money,
work.
anywhere there's money, and they would lock you up for having a $5 bag or $10 bag. Now you got all these cannabis. See, they fancied it as cannabis shops. See, they ain't no weed shop no more. Okay,
Dispensers.
yeah,
Right.
that's all it is. And so my thing is, all those brothers and sisters that was arrested for even carrying a joint, busted with a joint at that time. How come they not out? You know what
Yeah,
I'm
I
saying?
know that there's some legislation about making sure that their records are expunged. That
Yeah, yeah,
which is the only right thing to do because you're
yeah.
right. I mean, there are people who was doing 2 or 3 years for
And more
a
than
joint.
that, yeah. And if you was caught with an ounce, now you can easily go into one of these cannabis and get an ounce, half ounce, gram, stuff like that. With
So
another
it's
level.
it's something wrong with that. But as you know,
It's
the whole
money.
issue and cannabis, you know, was basically not the issue. It was the Rockefellers and the DuPonts who didn't want people to get hemp because hemp, you could make shirts. I mean, you could make
Yeah,
clothing, you can make
yeah,
oil, you could
yeah,
you could do all of these different things with hemp, and they didn't want hemp to get popular, so they kind of locked cannabis into because it's all cannabis, but they people weren't familiar with the difference between hemp and cannabis. So they took that lack of information and created reefer madness. And
yeah,
that gave them a power to make legislation come about that would help them not have to have that competition because you could grow cannabis any place. And if people understood that you could grow and harvest, and there was
yeah.
a lot of farms.
Oh
There was a,
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, people go out on the rooftops. They go anywhere where there was a pot to put your dirt in and put the seeds in and get some sunlight and some water. You was in business.
one thing that was interesting is when the Japanese, because a lot of the, the the army stuff, parachutes, and a lot of the clothing was made of hemp. And when the Japanese took over the Philippines, where the U.S. would get most of their clothing, they had to change the legislation so the hemp farmers could continue. Because at one time it was against the law to grow hemp, but they had to change that because they couldn't go to the Philippines anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So it just shows you how the law can change based on uh,
The law, it shows
political
the law can do
issues.
whatever it wants to when it wants to. That's one thing I found. And see, we've lived long enough, Tony, to see the changes. To
Well,
see
that's
just
the thing. If you're fortunate enough to be around long enough, you can begin to see uh, the forest rather
yeah,
than just looking at the trees.
yeah.
Now, if someone wants to reach out to you, Lloyd, for a personal reading, how do they do that?
Well, there's, with the technology, one of the easiest things now is to go to Linktree /numbers and you. But Linktree is spelled kind of different. It's LINK, the link. And then when it says tree, it's TREE, but it's TR.EE. So it's Linktree, LINKTR.EE /numbers and you. Everything is all spelled out.
Hmm.
Everything is all spelled out, numbers in you. They'll see I have a numerology mobile app for the phone. It's called a star 8, ASTAR, the number 8. So if they go there, they can download the app to tell them their lucky numbers, their challenging numbers, their cycles, the personal year, personal months, personal week, and a lot of other things that kind of card is best for you and whatever the case is. It's a whole thing. And then I have a free monthly newsletter that comes out. So the January newsletter is out now. It's absolutely free. We don't sell the mailing list. and now I begin to record it it's just busy, and I've got my online courses. I've been busy, Tony.
I can imagine. You said 130 something countries?
112 countries last time I checked.
112,
About 30 something languages,
30 something languages.
and over 8,000 students. Yep. Yeah.
That's interesting, brother. You've come a long way. I'm glad to have been in your orbit.
Look who's talking. No, Tony, we were blessed to meet some very dynamic people, and we're still meeting them. And it's just nice, Tony. We were brought in the right circles. And
Well, all things happen for a reason. We just, um, as you say, we're blessed to be on a certain type of orbit that
yeah,
allows us. But what I do believe in is what you give is what you receive. So if you got a lot of negative people in your life, you have to change the way you think
yeah,
first.
yeah,
And once
yeah.
you change the way you think, the people that are around you probably will change one way or another. Either they will disappear or they will, find a way to adapt to your change.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you carry stuff, a lot of people carry a lot of. So, as a matter of fact, it's funny that you talk about forgiveness. My article, it's either this week's Harlem Community News or last week, was the power of forgiveness and how there's no power, in being a victim.
Yeah, yeah,
You and usually the people who, especially in families, and you know about this, everybody knows about this. There's somebody in the family that did something years ago. Half of the time, you forgot what it is. You just know
but you're
that
still holding on to it,
I
though.
don't like them
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that
yeah.
person, and don't even know what it is. But that makes you sick. That's why so many people sometimes have
Well,
problems.
see, that's what makes this year of the nine so challenging. On one hand, it's a humanitarian number, but on the other hand, it's a number of conflict. And so people are literally on edge. So it ain't like the Democrats and the Republicans don't like each other anymore. They hate each other. You see what I'm saying? So there's something wrong with that. And so, and so again, everybody's on edge. Instead of trying to talk things through, I was reading about the other day where a man killed and stabbed his mother. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy. That's
But based
crazy.
on the issues that you mentioned about 2025, what do you think about this new administration that's coming in 2025 and some of the rhetoric that they have?
Well, it's going to be interesting because Donald Trump will make the 47th president, which adds up to a two. And one of the major opposition numbers to the number two is the number nine. So, although, yes, he has been elected, it's not going to be without consequences. And just the way the whole country is right now, astrologically and numerically, Pluto, the planet of transformation on November 19th of 2024, went into the sign of Aquarius, which is a revolutionary sign.
Mhm.
And Pluto's going to sit there for the next 20 years, which means it's going to be there from 20 to end on 2044. So with that means there's going to be revolutionary
The
changes.
age of Aquarius. This
Yep.
is the coming of the age of Aquarius.
Yeah, so it's going to be some interesting things. So, it doesn't make any difference whether Trump won, whether Harris won. This country is in for a crazy time.
It's going to be friction.
Yeah. And people used to do things out of the benefit of being an American and for the nation. Now it's about how much money you can make.
That's true.
Everything now is about the dollar bill. So, for example, when the food industry wanted to start telling people about the negative effects of extra, don't forget, it's not processed food anymore. It's ultra processed foods. So if you look at the back of these labels that you buy in the store, these packages, a lot of them will say bioengineered ingredients. So where did that come from? That wasn't there 10 years ago. So the food lobby says, well, we don't want you to inform the public about the dangers of ultra processed foods and its negative effect on the health. And why? Because of their bottom line.
That's right.
The pharmaceutical industry they gross $1.20 something trillion in profit. Profit, Tony, profit.
And there are foods that are banned in other countries. I
That they
didn't,
won't allow here.
you know,
Red dye number 40, yellow dye number 15. They ain't having none of that stuff. But what happens is if the manufacturers here and send those products over there, why can't they do that here in its own country?
well, that's really interesting because there are certain foods um, that breads, for instance, a lot of the fast food bread companies, the bread that they serve in America is different from the bread that they have in Europe.
Yes, everything they serve from milk to cereal products to everything is totally different when they send it into countries. And they talk about this world population, certain powers that be feels. Do you know you can fit 8 billion people? They said there's about 8 billion people on the planet. Well, 8 billion people, if you line them up side by side, could just fill Manhattan. You know what I'm saying? And so when you fly over the country and you look at all there's enough room for everybody, man. Animals too.
And
Animals
that's the
too.
unfortunate thing because it's basically greed,
That's all it is.
you know.
And it's too much. See, and that's what's going to undermine this country. I think greed is probably those types of things that have formed the such organizations as BRICS, because the
Yeah.
United States has sanctioned everybody. If you don't do things my way, we're going to freeze your money. So thus, this country shouldn't be surprised at the formation of BRICS. It
Right.
only started out with 5 people, 5 countries,
It's growing.
and it's grown into doubles. It's almost about 50 something people, because people are tired of just being threatened about, well, if you don't do it my way, we'll put sanctions on you. And some
And
countries just want to be. They don't want to go through change. They just want to be and just make a living, feed their citizens, take care of their nation. That's it.
and and the interesting thing is that in many cases, doing the right thing can be profitable. You don't have to do the wrong thing in order to make. I mean, you'll probably make a bigger profit by doing the wrong thing, but you can make a decent profit by doing the right thing, and
Well,
that
if the citizens are always taken care of, well, then the pharmaceutical industry would probably have problems because, like quiet as it's kept, Tony, over and above the main causes, the 3 leading causes of death to U.S. citizens is cancer, heart attacks, and the medical industry. And don't take my word, Google it yourself. They will tell you that medical errors, there's a fancy doctor word they use for it. But that means, when you, a lot of times, so you can have a person go for routine, supposed to be procedure, and don't come out.
never come out.
Yeah.
That happened a lot during COVID. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
the death rate went up because of mistakes. People were tired, and if you had the flu, that was automatically assumed.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The COVID numbers went up and the flu numbers went down. And the reason for that is that many of the flu numbers were put into the COVID. And plus, hospitals would get more money for someone having COVID than if they had the flu.
Yeah. Well, I knew a couple of clients, they were told that if they gave them permission to say this person died of COVID rather than any other disease, the hospitals would get money. So
Yeah,
it's all about money. And so there's something wrong with it. They talk about freedom of speech, but if we talk a certain way, they'll take you off the air.
that's true.
They'll block you. You
That's
know what I'm
true.
saying?
I mean,
So
I kind of went through not as severe, but a similar
I
issue
did too, my friend.
when I was writing about, the truth about having if your body is healthy, if you keep it alkaline, it can fight most of the diseases. And that,
That sounds simple to me. That's non-threatening. You ain't
but
threatening the White House. You ain't threatening the president. You ain't. You know,
But
and I talk
a lot of
about silver.
ads in my cousin's paper, they were saying, we gotta change some of that language, or we're gonna pull our ads because that's going against, because
Isn't that crazy though, Tony? That's
and it's funny
crazy.
because these companies own so many subsidiaries that you would say, well, what does an ad on this? I'm not saying any name, but have to do with what we're saying, and you track it back, and it's owned by one of the companies that are basically pharmaceutical
Yep.
that
Yep. Yep.
is
Yep.
creating money based on COVID.
And you know what's interesting? Elon Musk is talking about, he's very close to the president now, the billionaire.
Yeah.
Is saying if they can have his way, they're going to start taking medical ads off TV. They don't have it when you go outside the country. When you go to any other country other than this country, they're not pushing the A1 fibs and the latest medication. Now you
And
can't.
and the thing that's always is interesting to me, sometimes frightening, is they will give you a 1 minute commercial, maybe a 60-second. And at the very end, they would say, don't see your doctor if. And then they give you all of these. But the thing that really gets me, that this can kill you. It can cause
Yes,
death.
they'll tell you too. They'll tell you right to your face.
This
Oh,
can
this
kill
could
you.
cause blindness. This could do this. This could do that. That's
And
crazy.
the
So
thing
why
is,
would you take it then, Tony?
and if it's a new drug, they say, well, don't take it if you're allergic to it. Well, how am I going to know I'm allergic to it if it's new? And, before I take it. So I'm just happy that I'm not at this point in my life depending upon, pharmaceuticals, because there are people, unfortunately, that have shopping bags full of
Yes.
different types of pills from different doctors who don't always talk to each other, and you never know where there's a conflict.
The patients could have toxic buildup. All of these medications have some withdrawal at some point, some downside to it. And so if you got the average senior citizen, I had a guy on my show from Hawaii. He says the average senior citizen is on no less than 6 or 7 prescriptions.
That's true. That's
You know
true.
what I'm saying?
And one of the reasons why the pharmaceutical companies were so adamant about the legalization of cannabis is because it was proven, like cataracts and even certain cancers
Yep.
could be dealt with, and that's a lot of money that would be lost.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
they figured out how to do it themselves, so they.
Well, everything, unfortunately, with this country is about the bottom line. And to me, like, what about if you help the citizens? Seems like you could have a profit over a long period of
But
time.
that's what I was saying.
Yeah, that's getting right back to your point. Why not help the citizens? And you think the pharmaceutical, yeah, okay, so they're not going to make it in one fell swoop, but they'll make the money.
Eventually,
And,
I
the
mean,
children, whatever.
and do good. So you're saying that 2025, though, we might not come to that realization. It might have to be in 2026 before we kind of get out of this.
Yeah, and it'll
war.
be better for the nation. But I was saying that in 2023, that the next 2 years, 2024, will be with finances. Now there's a challenge about the fiat. Now there's challenges about Wall Street and derivatives and things like that, that people are manipulating the market and whatnot. And people are beginning to wake up to the sense that, why is my rent going up, my food going up, my mortgage is going up, my car insurance is going up, everything is going up on my salary? I mean, so you don't need to be a rocket scientist to say there's something wrong with this picture. And everything is going up, Tony.
And one of the things, and I'm not an expert on this, but when I know Trump has talked about tariffs and how he's going to start creating these tariffs, which means that things are going to be higher because that's going to trickle down to the consumer.
Yeah. And especially when you come in from a major country like China, a lot of things are imported from China, so China could say, well, we can put tariffs on you. So I mean,
Elon Musk kind of got between that,
yeah,
with his, he got some deals going before Trump would come in so that he could lock, because a lot of his stuff was coming out of China. A lot of his stuff.
yeah. And in fact, some companies, even before Bush has gotten into office, has actually increased their stockpile of it for just in case, so they can have at least extra supplies on hand. But everything is going to play out. Everything is, there's this thing that by 2030 you'll be happy and want for nothing. I'm here to tell you it's not going to happen. Now, there are man-made plans, but then there are heavenly plans. And Tony, what my experience, I'm going to always go with the heavens. I'm going to always go with the heavens. Sorry.
Well, what do you think is going to happen 2030?
It's going to be a year of change dramatically, but it's not going to be what people want, where everybody's just like consumed, everybody's like robotic, and you're going to be happy. People are not going to be. I've never known of people being happy being controlled, Tony. There's always revolution.
That's true.
We know this.
That's the spark of revolution. There's always going to be one that does not go along.
Yeah.
And then when that one goes outside, people will follow.
There's something I heard the other day that some country, in European country, is now trying to impose that its citizens can only eat 200 and something calories per day. There's going to be a revolution, brother. You know what I'm saying? And especially when you talk about the high rate of obesity and things of that nature. How do you do that? How do you control to say, okay, you've eaten too much for today, you can't eat no more? There's going to be revolution, man. I don't know how they figure people are going to be happy and want for nothing. Want for nothing? The human nature.
The COVID lockdown was kind of like a test. They were able to control a lot of people, created a lot of issues. Matter of fact, I think the whole idea. And I'm just saying, in 2030, we won't be managing 30 trillion dollars. Financial literacy.
Yeah, they do. And
not only women.
I just don't think that it's going to be I think it is wishful thinking, but there are always higher forces at work, Tony. Do you know, ever since man has come on the planet, man has predicted the end of time, from Nostradamus to the last days? And you know what thing I noticed? They're not here, and Mother Nature still is. So I'm going to always go with Mother Nature, Tony. Sorry.
And for those who, again, may be tuning in, I'm talking to Lloyd Strayhorn, numerologist.
We way off track. I ain't talking about no numbers. What's up with the signs? We're going to have to do that next time. But it's all your fault. We was talking about numbers in the Harlem, so...
That's right.
We went political, so it was like, but it's a good conversation. And for those who are newer generations, they need to have a little of this history of what we've gone through, what we've experienced.
But one of the things that you have often said is that if someone can tell you something that doesn't have a number attached to it, that you would give them a prize.
Yes. One day during the COVID thing, I says, here's $100 bill. It's yours for free. But you must tell me how you're going to start your day and end your days without using numbers. I defy anybody. You can't do it, Tony. The first thing you're going to do is look at your phone or look at your time to see what time it is. You can't buy no breakfast, no gum. You can't do any, Tony. The world is with numbers, man. You can't do nothing with. Imagine an athlete. One of the greatest honor for an athlete is to have his or her jersey number retired. That no matter how long that franchise exists, whoever comes into it can never have that number. Numbers player, how you going to know the scores without a number? The betting industry would go out of business in Las Vegas. Suppose you met the most beautiful woman on the planet, Tony, and you said, girl, I want your phone number. And she just tell you, just dial any number, boo. Man, you be dialing numbers forever. But if you dial the right 10 numbers in the right order, you get the right person you're looking for. It's like combination. Why you think people can't hit these lotteries, these megas that's now in the hundreds of millions and billions? Because if it was just, and the numbers only go from 1 to 9, they're double numbers like 36. Well, 3 plus 6 plus 3 is 9. But the point is the numbers only go from 1 to 9, but they're so varied. They're so varied.
Now, when you say 1 to 9, what about 0?
Well, that's everything starts at 0. When you're born, when you come out of your mother's canal, you ain't 1 year old. You got to wait 365 days before you hit that 1. Mm-hmm. And when people tell me zeros don't count, I says, here's what you do. I'm going to put a 1 here with a little comma and add as many zeros behind it as whatnot. That number becomes very important. So a 10 becomes 100, and then 100 becomes 1,000, then 10,000, then 1,000,000, then 1,000,000,000. So the more, and in fact, the whole principles of computers is based upon the principles of just ones and zeros.
Ones and zeros, which comes
from. Imagine if you threw the other numbers into the mix.
Comes from West Africa, you know. That's
the internet was not invented by a Nigerian.
Right. But again, Lloyd Strayhorn, 2025, a number 9, a time for spiritual development.
Yep.
Time to be careful with your temper because
yep.
With Mars and all of the planets, yep. you know, in line with war, we'll probably see a lot of this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we might not see the end of some of the wars that are taking place, but.
And notice school shootings already. You know, I mean, it's increased. It's just crazy. But astrologically, those under the signs of Aries, Scorpio, and Leo will benefit. Or people born on the 1st, the 9th, the 10th, the 18th, the 19th, 27th, or 28th. They will be the beneficiaries of the year we're coming into this year of 2029.
Okay, so the 19th is there.
Yeah. That's why you're my new best friend, Tony, for the year.
But what are those numbers again?
The signs would either be Aries first, Scorpio, then Leo, or a person born on the 1st of the month, or the 9th, the 10th of the month, or the 18th, because 1 plus 8 is 9, the 19th, because 1 plus 9 is 10, and 1 plus equals is 1, or the 27th or the 28th of the month. So if you're under those dates or under those signs, you have it's not that you're not going to go through your struggle, but compared to, knock on wood, compared to some of your friends, you're doing pretty good.
We have a couple of more minutes. I don't know whether I've asked you this question. Who was it your own research or who first introduced numerology to you?
Numerology was introduced to me as a science. Well, actually, numerology was introduced to me in the summer in Atlantic City, talking to a young lady. She asked me, did I know anything about numerology? And after I graduated from college, I worked for CBS. And CBS had a book division then, and Avon Books. And the first book I picked up was by Vincent Lopez. Vincent Lopez was a orchestra leader, and he wrote a book on numerology. I think I still have that first book here. And then the story went on. Then I went for Harper's Magazine and a lot of things. But eventually, because I'd always been interested in astrology ever since I can remember being shy in school, you know, wanting to talk to the girls. I found out my sign. And then I says, okay, well, these are all the attributes. But as I found out, everybody wanted to know about their sign. So what I thought was exclusive was not. It was more inclusive than exclusive. And so it just led to my journey. But as somebody says, Lloyd, you would make a living doing numerology. Your books would be sold all over the world. You'd write 6 books. You'd be on every national TV. I just say, get out of here, because I was the worst math student in school.
That's interesting. You were?
Yeah. Such a paradox. Yeah.
And that's interesting. One, I guess, last question, which people often ask, the difference between going to a numerologist and an astrologist.
Well, with astrology, they deal with your zodiac sign. And in-person zodiac signs, they look at how the planets are aspecting, how they're bouncing off each other, and how they fit around the wheel. And so they're the 12 houses. Each house represents a characteristic. So if your planet, main planet or sun is in the 6th house, that's a house of health. So therefore, you may be more the person who exercises regularly. You got some people who are just couch potatoes. Then you got some people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s still take care of themselves. So it all depends. With numerology, I just deal with the more spiritual and esoteric of numbers. So that's why I merged both, because my original field of study was astrology. And then when I got into numerology, I didn't need to know the exact time you were born or whatever the case is, because I had that experience. A person would say they were born at 7:53 p.m. I do the chart. Lo and behold, they found their birth certificate and they were born at 7:53 a.m. Well, that 12-hour difference shift the whole paradigm of how the planets have been aligning and moving throughout the stars in the heavens in that day, you know? So there's a
So,
lot.
so how do you compensate for that numerology? Because one of the things being born in 1947, most of the hospitals don't really give you the date that the time that you
Yes,
were
but
born.
they actually do now. When you get a generic, see, remember the whole dispute about Barack Obama, was he born in this
Right,
country?
right,
When he
right.
coming? Well, when they got, see, the hospitals always carried the exact time you were born. And in fact, when I had my certificate, it showed my mother's age, how old she was, my father's age, how old he was, what time I was born, all that stuff. They don't do that anymore, Tony. They
I,
just give you now a generic birth certificate. But if you really came to the health department of your local state or city, they would tell you the exact time.
because
Everybody had an exact time.
I was trying to, because I lost my birth certificate, and when my mom passed, you
Mhm.
know, I really forgot whether it was, as you were saying, 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. So I went to Lincoln Hospital. They said we don't have those records anymore. So I was not really sure as to how I could get a correct reading, because, as you say, there's a whole lot of difference between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. coming into
Yes.
the world.
Well, now they have astrologers that do, when they erect the chart or form the chart, as they call it, the word is they erect the chart. They have astrologers now that know how to ask key questions that are kind of zero in based upon your answers that you were probably born around this time of day. They've got
Interesting.
that too. Yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
so that's why I got into numerology, because but you now understand why in the South and in the Caribbean, the elders kept all the birth records in the Bible,
Yeah.
because the midwife would come and the baby's born on Tuesday, the midwife come on Friday, collect the information, and they didn't give too much about our children. The name was spelled all wrong. They decided to spell it the way they wanted to spell it, but the parents said, well, we want the name spelled this way. So there was a lot of discrepancies where they'd say, well, my mother says I'm born on this day, but my birth certificate says I'm born on that day. When I hear that, almost always they're either from the South or from the Caribbean, because it was like, hey, they just black folks and they ain't no big deal and whatnot. And so what happens is I have a way of determining that. But one thing is clear with this: the one thing about a woman, one of the milestones is when she gives birth to a child. So I'll say, were you the first, second, or third? Normally, the first, second, or third, the women remembers, period. Okay. Now, when it gets, don't forget, because in the South, there was nothing for, like my father came from about 13 brothers and sisters. Okay. So I'd imagine with my grandmother, things would get a little foggy after about child number 4 or 5. Well, you was born at some time. But if your mother is only one, the one thing they know the birthday of their parents. So I don't care what the birth certificate says. If the mother says this is the time they're born, I'm going to always go with the mother.
Mm.
You ask any woman that bear a child, she will tell you. You will have no argument. Yeah, I remember I moved the couch and my water broke, and every woman who bears children has their story. Everyone.
Yeah, but the thing
They don't
is
forget.
that if they pass before you, it's always hard to get it. Lloyd Strayhorn, we've been talking about everything about from for
Well,
everything.
next time is a good excuse. Just have me back on soon. We'll
We
talk
have
about
to we have to have you come back on soon. I understand that you may be doing some returning to Soul City for
Yes,
some.
I'm interested in joining the Soul City family. I would be honored to do it. I got to thank Matt. Matt McCoy is pretty persistent, but that's why he's gotten Soul City to the point of where it is too.
Well, maybe at one point you can have me on as a guest so we can continue our conversation.
Man, that'll be perfect. That'll be perfect. That's considered automatic. What we've been doing is about 15 years or so, at least.
It's been longer than that because
yeah, I think so.
I was, Angela Harden retired, and she was doing this for 22,
was about 20 something years.
22.
Yeah.
22 years. So
he's retired. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, her retirement party was about 2 weeks ago, and so 22 years is it just. I mean, my daughter is 21 now. I mean, actually, she's 22.
Well, time goes by when you're having fun, Tony. That's all I can say.
Well, thank you. But as you say, there's nothing that we can talk about that doesn't have numbers involved with it.
Yeah.
If you are interested in numerology, Lloyd Strayhorn, if you can catch him, he's a busy guy.
Yeah, right now.
Before we leave, Lloyd, just let people know how they can reach you again.
They can reach me. The best way is linktrees/numbers and you. That's linktr.ee/numbers and you. Everything is all spelled out. They get a free newsletter, but they can get my books, my products and services, all available through there. Or they can go to my website, lloyd-strayhorn.com.
And they can get an appointment that way. And all
they can get appointments. They can sign up for my online courses that I have around the world, whatever the case is, free newsletter. It's nice, Tony. It's nice. But, I've just been consistent. And it shows in what we do.
Yeah, well, I've tried to be consistent too, brother. That's probably why we're consistently talking to each other.
Yeah. Another year, and I look forward to the same time next year as we greet.
Well, we may be doing it before that because you're going to have me as one of your guests. Lloyd Strayhorn, a numerologist and a good friend. Take care. My happy holiday to you and your loved ones.
Well, Tony, to be honest, I don't consider you a friend. I consider you family. That's true. How it is. We really family, Tony.
That's true. Matter of fact, I like you better than some of the.
I don't believe you said that.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't want anybody listening.
That's where we're coming from, though. Be real talk, okay?
All right. Listen, thanks, Lloyd. I appreciate you taking time.
You're terrible, Tony, but you're honest. Okay.
We'll have to do this again. Lloyd Strayhorn is a very unusual, brilliant person. Try to connect with him. I'm sure that he can provide a lot of information that you might not have. This is Tony Rogers, your host for Urbanology, the Art of War, wishing you a happy new year, saying goodbye to 2024 and hello to 2025. And I look forward to seeing you next year. Take care.
This is Kia Rogers, and you're listening to Urbanology with my dad, Tony Rogers, on WHCR 90.3 FM New York.
Urbanology.